we go. Hello, I'm Mary Ellen Dombrowski, President of the Connecticut River Valley Chamber, and I'm here to welcome you to HR with Lois. It's our first opportunity for Lois to share her great expertise with us, and so I'd like to introduce you. Lois Kraus is a human resources consultant, and she's kind of retired. She's had over 25 years experience, and she's held senior HR leadership positions with both domestic and global responsibilities, with emphasis in workforce planning, including succession planning, organizational development, employee relations, regulatory compliance, including being an affirmative action officer, compensation and rewards, benefits, including the development of wellness programs, performance management, recruitment, and mergers and acquisitions. So she has experience with everything. She's currently trying to retire, but she finds herself drawn to do some pro bono HR work for her friends and nonprofits like the Chamber, where she has always volunteered, and we appreciate her so much. Lois holds two HR certifications. She's an SPHR from Human Resource Certification Institute, and she's a SHRM SCP certification through the Society of Human Resources Management. Before retiring, she taught a certification prep course at Central Connecticut State University for the SHRM exam. So Lois, welcome, and thank you for sharing your great expertise with us today.
Well, thanks, Mary Ellen. I'd like to welcome everybody. And yes, I'm trying to retire, but I like to share some of the knowledge that I have, especially nowadays with all of the changing HR regulations with the COVID-19. Every day there's something new. So everything that I say today will be changed tomorrow, but we'll talk about it. There are some things that are static for a while anyway. And that's why normally when people ask me questions, I have to answer like an attorney, although this is not legal advice and I'm not an attorney. I have to say it depends, because it depends on what the circumstances are and what day it is today and what state you might be having to send somebody to on a daily basis. That things can change. So I'm going to talk a little more, not really go through a PowerPoint kind of thing, but there are just some talking points here. So we're going to stick on this agenda slide for most of it. And we'll talk about, the policies and procedures that you need to consider as you reopen businesses. What do you want to institute to keep everybody safe? Those are the kinds of things you have to think about. Do you have directives from the government? Lots of different organizations or different industries like hair salons and food service industries have very specific directives from the health departments, in addition to the governor's or the federal government's directives for opening. So, and actually, those are pretty, they're actually easier than a general business, because they are so specific that you just have to call up the health department and ask them to come out and help you set up your policies and procedures, and they will do that. And they will go run through it with you and see if they can help you out. So, but you have to figure out how to get your certification, because you have to go online to get a certification to show that you are doing the right protocols to make sure that you're keeping all of your employees and customers safe. And you should make sure that you write down your policies. Because if something happens, you'll have something to refer to. So if somebody says, well, I got sick here because of this, this, and this, you can say, well, we took temperatures, we asked all these questions, we had people sign a piece of paper that says that they haven't been out of the country or out of the state, or gone to states that are prohibited and things like that. It will help you if you have them all written down. And also, if you've posted them for customers and handed them out to your employees in writing, whether it be digitally or in paper, and make sure that they sign for it, the employees, that is. Obviously, customers, you can't have sign for it. But I was at the doctor's office the other day, and they made me sign a paper that I attest to the answers to all the questions that they asked me. So I guess you can actually ask customers as well. So, make sure that your policies are reasonable to your business as well. That's why it's so difficult, because every business is different. Every culture is different. You know what's going to fly with your people. You know what hot buttons they have. So you need to have them comply in a way that they are going to understand. Are you going to take temperatures every day? Are you going to log those temperatures? And if you do that, that is a medical test. If you log temperatures for your employees, you have to put them in a separate file. You can't put them in a personnel file. You have to put them in a separate medical file. And you have to keep that under lock and key, and only very few people are allowed to see that. The managers aren't allowed to see that. It's only the people that take care of those files should be able to see that. And then you should decide. There is some guidance from the governor on a portal that you will see in another slide. But do you want to have it at 99.9? Do you want to have it at 100 or less? You have to decide what temperature you will allow people to come in having. And remember that some people's temperatures are lower than others, and other people's temperatures are higher than normal. So just keep those in mind. Don't leave yourself open to discrimination lawsuits. There were at least 800 lawsuits brought to the courts about COVID-19 only in the month of May here in Connecticut. All different areas, discrimination, not keeping people safe, so on and so forth. And how are you going to handle insurance coverage? If you want people to come back to work in a building that has elevators, how are you going to change the times that people have to show up, because that you don't want everybody in the elevator at the same time? You're going to have that staggered so that you can get everybody in a reasonable time. Are you going to pay them for the time if there's a backup? Normally, if it takes an extra like 3 to 5 minutes, that's called de minimis, and you don't really have to pay them for that. But if it takes longer than that, and if they have to come into a place where they have to put on protective equipment, and it takes longer than that, that's called donning and doffing, and you have to pay them for that time. And everybody has to wear a mask, or you have to be in a cubicle or in an office, or have plexiglass between people. So, and you have to have them wear masks in the common areas. You should shut down cafeterias, lunchrooms, those kinds of things. And what if somebody says that they don't want to wear a mask and they don't have a medical condition? I mean, there might be some people that have a medical condition that you have to make an accommodation for. And maybe the accommodation is they don't come back to work in person, that they work from home, or they do something similar, but not necessarily the same thing. Do you want to say that if anybody has a temperature of 100 or more, they have to be tested before they can come back? If somebody doesn't want to wear a mask, do they have to be tested before you allow them back in? Make sure that you put all of these down in writing and everybody's clear about what the regulations are. You have the right as an employer to require people to wear face masks. Like I said, unless they're they're outside or in a cubicle or in an individual office that's 6 feet apart, or with plexiglass, or some other kind of barrier. And you have the responsibility to keep your employees safe. OSHA will require you to log the a COVID case, a positive case in your workplace as, you know, a listed illness in the workplace on your OSHA log, if someone can say that they got it at work. And the guidance from the governor has been, and from OSHA, if somebody gets sick, they're to assume, unless you prove that they got it someplace else, that they got it at work. So it will be OSHA recordable. And I mean, how many people do you want to have work from home? Should you look at that from an ADA perspective? There are, if someone has answered a question about they've been come in contact with somebody with COVID, how long do you make them stay out? Do you allow them to come back if they have tested negative with a COVID test, and ask them to be tested? If it's part of your, you know, regulation, you know, you have to pay for the test. And you should provide masks if you require them for people to wear. If someone wants to wear their own mask because it's more comfortable, as long as it, you know, complies with the regulations of the type of mask that is, you know, is fine to keep it away from everybody else, then, you know, you can allow them to do that. You don't have to make them wear the mask that you provide, but as long as they have some type of face covering. And maybe you decide, I'm going to let all the people that have been working from home continue to work from home for a certain period of time. And maybe you say till 2021. Maybe you say till October. And if a worker has children at home that are not going back to school or daycare is closed, you have to have a discussion with them, and you have to allow them to stay home to take care of the children. And they are eligible for the 80 hours of paid sick leave for COVID, which is in addition to your own or anything else that you have. And also, you have to allow them to have the COVID in the CARES Act, 12 weeks of paid FMLA. These are for companies that have less than 500 people. There are very few exemptions. You may be exempt from that if you have 50 or fewer employees, or if it's a very, very, very difficult for the company to survive if you have to pay for all of this. But the one thing that they won't allow you to get away with is if people have to stay home to take care of the kids, you can't, you have to pay them for that. If you're paying people, they have to be under the FMLA, paid FMLA, which can be up to, it's 2/3 of their salary, which can be $200 a day, up to a grand total of $10,000. But a lot of companies, if they turn around and they have 12 weeks off and they've been paid the 2/3, a lot of companies have decided to come up with creative solutions to this childcare problem. Some companies have had like hired a teacher or a licensed professional to have the workers' children come in a socially distanced way to, bring them there so they can come to work. Others have decided that, you'll get in big trouble if you turn around and lay them off because they can't come back to work. You have to have a discussion with them and decide how you want to handle it. And there may be, with the American with Disabilities Act, you may have to have that discussion with people about how you want to handle it. What's a reasonable accommodation? And maybe working from home is reasonable. Maybe it isn't, but you have to have the discussion. Also, when you rehire people that you laid off or that you furloughed, make sure when they come back, you give them an offer letter again. If you're in the state of Connecticut, they need to have the offer letter stating all of the regulations and the rules and the new rules that they have to sign and what job that they're having and what the circumstances are. They have to, they have that with their job description, and they should be given that ability to read all of it in paper and sign off that they accept that offer of this is the way they're going to come back to work. It'll calm a lot of people's fears and a lot of people's questions if you hand it to them in writing. And it could be digitally. You can do it over Zoom. You can do it over, WebEx, something like that. And you can have it, send them something and they can sign it electronically. They don't have to have it in person if everybody's kind of afraid of that. And the same way you give people the rules and regulations and have them sign off on that, the offer letters for the later furloughed employees needs to be the same. And if they don't accept them, and they don't have a great reason for not accepting, your offer of work, to come back to work. I mean, some people have said, oh, well, I mean, it's supposed to end this week and we might have some extra, but they said, I'm making more money on unemployment than I was working, so I don't want to come back until this is over. Well, that's not a good reason. And you can have them document that they don't want to come back, that they're refusing work. And tell them if they do that, that could very well prohibit them from getting their unemployment. I mean, that's if they're refusing work. Now, if somebody legitimately says that they're afraid and they have compromised immune system, or they have somebody at home that does, and they're afraid to come back, or they don't think that your protocols are that great, they should be able to document that and say that that's why they don't want to come back. And then you have that interactive discussion with them. And always post your policies for customers, and clients, so that people know what the guidelines are. And I mean, obviously, a place that sells, takeout coffee, like a drive-through, is not going to have the same kind of protocols as a restaurant that's allowed to have 25% of the people in there, 25% of the capacity in there. But you have to take a look at that, and you have to make sure that all the protocols are up there. And then what if you have employees that have to travel out of state and they have to go to states that are very high, there are a lot of high cases there, and when they come back, they have to quarantine. There are some protocols that if they come back and they are tested and they have a positive test or 2 positive tests, they don't have to quarantine for 14 days. But I would really consider, seeing if you can handle not having them go to that state if it's a really bad hotspot, and see if you can come up with another suggestion.
Lois, can
Yep.
they would have to have 2 negative tests, correct, to go back?
Yeah.
Okay, you said positive mistake, so I just want to clarify that.
So I meant that they don't have it. So
Correct.
And if you have other employees in other states that are in hotspots that usually come to your, like your headquarters, I would suggest, sticking with Zoom or WebEx or something like that, just to, for a bit longer until they can get theirs down. Unless there's a problem, because otherwise they'll have to come here and they'll have to quarantine, or they might have a test. So it's one of those things where everything's fluid right now and everything has to be flexible, but you need to make sure that you write a Bible of what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do for this and this and this and this and this. And if this happens, that happens, we're going to address it this way. I had somebody ask me what to do there in manufacturing. And they had an employee that was going with his family down to Disney in Florida. And he knew full well when he came back, he was going to have to quarantine for 14 days. They don't have the wherewithal. They have like barely 100 employees. They don't have the money to go to be testing everybody, kind of thing. And they don't really have the ability to have the person take a week's vacation and then have 2 weeks off after that. So I told them, you know, you need to have the discussion before they go that you may have to go on unemployment for 2 weeks when you come back while you're quarantining, because you deliberately went to a state that you knew full well was a hot spot and you would have to quarantine. And we cannot agree to allow you to do that. We'll give you your vacation, but we can't agree to the extra, 2 weeks. You'll have to take it as unemployment. So, I mean, there are different ways to handle it. He may have a problem and say, well, I have to get my my paid sick, my 80 hours of paid sick leave and my paid FMLA. You might have to deal with that, but not if somebody does it deliberately ahead of time, with forethought. It was premeditated kind of thing. So, but just have them, sign something that says, I understand that when I come back, I will have to quarantine for 2 weeks, and I may have to take unemployment for 2 weeks because I chose to go to this state, and it wasn't required by work, and it wasn't required by, it was a vacation. It wasn't, he didn't have to go down to help family or something like that. So everybody needs to take a look at their own organization and come up with, the rules and regulations, and communicate to all your workers in multiple ways, because we know that workers in different age groups or in different industries listen to things differently. Some people are, you can only text them. Other people, you have to talk to them on the phone. Some people you email. Some people you have to talk to them face to face, or Zoom, that kind of thing. You have to communicate with these people and all the stakeholders, like customers and clients and suppliers. You need to communicate multiple ways so that the message gets out there. Make sure that you are very clear, because it'll only help you in the long run, because you'll have all of your rules and regulations down, and you can go back and take a look at it, and you can say, this is what it's going to be. And I told everybody in multiple ways, and give them a chance to ask questions, and have them sign a paper if it's employees or regular customers that have to come for long periods of time, that they understand that they have to sign this and say that this is, I understand that these are the regulations and I agree to them. So, okay, if you want to flip to the next slide, these are links for everybody's information. There's the CDC guidance on reopening. The CDC gives you the scientific way to handle it. There's the OSHA guidance on preparing the workplace for COVID. And that'll tell you, it also has some forms and stuff there that tells you what you need to know, and how to go about deciding whether it goes on your OSHA log or not. And then there's the link for the Families First Corona Response Act. It's got questions and answers, but it actually has the act, and that'll give you some guidance on to whether you are eligible for exemption. Very few people are eligible for exemption, even if they have under 50 people, and it's only for some things, not for all things. And then Governor Lamont's frequently asked questions. This is a great portal, and it's updated almost every day or every couple of days. And he has really great questions and the answers on there. And it's really very helpful. So, because like I said, everything changes, it's changing daily. So you need to go on there often. If you have a question, go on there, check it out. The question will probably be there and there'll be an answer. And then Governor Lamont's sector rules are there. So every different industry sector, these are the, the businesses for recovery. They're the rules and certification to reopen. And this will tell you how you can get your certification. And then there's the EEOC, that's the Equal Employment Occupational Commission. What you should know about COVID-19 and the ADA, the Rehabilitation Act, and other EEO laws. So it'll give you an idea on the types of things that you need to know for compliance so that you don't get sued for discrimination, because that's the last thing you want, especially in this recent update with Black Lives Matter. You want to make sure that everybody feels that they are treated the same way as everybody else, and make sure that the president gets treated the same way as the last person in the door that is just, an intern. Everybody gets treated the same way. Everybody's got to follow the same rules. Because if you make exceptions for this one or for that one, obviously you have to make exceptions for medical conditions under the ADA. But other than that, don't leave yourself open for discriminatory challenges because you let somebody that's the CEO or the CFO get away with this, and you didn't let the customer service person get away with it. Just remember that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I think that if you have no HR person, the person, I'd be happy to, talk to you, but somebody needs to talk to the leadership in the organization and explain to them that it's going to be better for their bottom line if they treat everybody equally. If they don't make exceptions for this one or that one, because they will really, it'll come back and bite them if they do that. So.
Well, Lois, I just want to thank you for all the great information today. And it's good to know that everybody's being treated the same, as it should always be, right?
Yep.
So with that, I just want to say thank you and hope that you'll come back again.
Okay, you're most welcome, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope everybody gets something good out of this.
Thank you, Lois.
Take care.
Bye-bye.